Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about a big storm coming with heavy snow and a major snowstorm developing, as well as an update on the La Nina going forward. Welcome back everyone. We have an important update today, so let's go ahead and take time to hit the like button and also hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already. I do daily updates and it's important to share this video with your friends and family on social media to let them know on what may be coming down the road. So let's go over the details here on the 500 millibar this morning. You can see these areas of low pressure here. That's bringing a piece of the polar vortex down into New England with their coldest temperatures of the season. We've got all this red that typically indicates your higher pressure, and it's dry as well, and drier air is cold at night, so it's pretty chilly in the midsection of the country. And let's take a look at some of the temperatures this morning. You can actually see the frigid temperatures well to the north with that piece of the polar vortex kind of sinking down into New England, bringing those negative temperatures up here in upstate New York as well as into Maine. Even some single digits dropping a little bit further south, but man, it's pretty chilly under that drier air in the midsection of the country. But it is dry, but we have dipped down to the 20s, even down as far south into Dallas this morning with those 30s, even in portions of the southeast. So what's happening going forward? So we've been talking about this La Nina. In fact, we've been classified in a La Nina since the middle of October, right? So we had back-to-back La Ninas. We were in a La Nina last year. Now we're in another La Nina this year for winter. And what does all that mean? So typically, you've got a little bit drier activity down here in the south with your subtropical jet not nearly as active. But you got your polar jet to the north that is active. That's why they're seeing all the rain up here into the upper northwest here, as well as some of the colder temperature anomalies. And then when you have an El Nino, it's typically the opposite, right? You have a lot more active subtropical jet. You have the jet stream lowering. You get a lot of wet and wetter conditions down here into the south, which is typically what the opposite of what we've been seeing as of late. And so we've had basically the typical La Nina, and this is the last 90 days. I mean, the La Nina started in the middle of October, guys. So this is what's happening since then. As far as precipitation anomalies, it's been extremely dry in the desert Southwest, going into West Texas, going into good portions of the South. And then you've got to the north where you got that polar jet is a lot more active, right? You're seeing those above average precipitation anomalies well to the north here with the more active polar jet. But there are times that you could see some subtle hints and changes in the pattern. So let's take a look at the overall setup here of these ocean temperatures out here at the Pacific. There's your La Nina. It's been plenty cold out here in the equatorial Pacific, but it's been plenty warm into the Gulf of Mexico. That's what brought all the severe weather with these well above average temperature anomalies in the Gulf. And here's where we stand right now. I mean, this is your Nino 3.4 index. Typically, when you have a negative deviation all the way down to a 1, that's almost like moderate La Nina criteria. So we continued to drift further south, but we started to see subtle hints. We may actually be bottoming in the La Nina right now and making a trend back towards neutral. And that's what the Climate Prediction Center has already indicated. By springtime, we could be looking at more of an ENSO neutral, more average type pattern setting up. But then here's what's interesting as well. So we also have the Oceanic Monthly Outlook that updated just the other day. And it also indicates we could be bottoming right here into a moderate La Nina criteria right now. And you can see it's slowly starting to lift up out of that criteria. Now it'll be subtle, but this is indicating that we could be going back into more average or more neutral type conditions, going back into spring, basically like what we saw last year. But if this continues to trend, it actually is trending to possibly an El Nino by the time we get into that summer and into late summer months. Now, again, that's a long ways out. So, but in the short term, the subtle hints is it is bottoming out, and we're starting to see indications where the subtropical jet is starting to become a little bit more active. So let me show you what I'm talking about here on the Southern Oscillation Index, where you typically, when you have, say, a +8, that typically implies a La Nina, which is what we've been in. When you have a -8, that typically implies an El Nino. In layman's terms, that just basically says, whenever you see a negative number, you start to have indications of the subtropical jet becoming a little bit more active, right? And so when you have cold air pressing down from the north and you have a subtropical jet a little bit more active, that lowers the jet stream. And this is typically the time of year you have parts of the south where if you are going to be seeing snow, this is typically when you start to see it because the jet stream lowers. So we're starting to see combinations of the teleconnections actually going negative, and this big drop in the Southern Oscillation Index is starting to see early indications, because this is the lagging, this is a kind of a lagging indicator. This is indications of 10 to 14 days out. Things are going to be starting to get active, but with the negative drop and the continued trend, look at the 30-day moving average. I mean, we were at 12, and all of a sudden now we're a 6. That's a drastic drop, guys. So that tells me the subtropical jet is starting to become a little bit more active and starting to set up, and typically implies more Miller type A setups going forward. And that's what we're going to actually see. So let me kind of break this down. So here's the overall teleconnections too. So we got cold air coming with the NAO, which is your North American oscillation. You can actually see it negative by the middle of the month, right? And it continues to remain neutral to negative for the rest of January. So typically what that means is you start to see blocking up here into Greenland. Not only do you see blocking, but that also allows systems to come, when they come across, to slow down. When they slow down, they become more amplified as well. So we also see the EPO, which is your Eastern Pacific Oscillation. Man, look at this. By the middle of the month, I mean, it takes a nosedive south, right? Negative. That's some cold air, guys. And with that trend, with the favored teleconnections of the negative NAO, the negative EPO, that typically implies much colder air for the central and eastern 2/3 of the US. And that combination on top of the negative drops in the SOI index, things are going to be starting to get a little bit more active for parts of the South in the weeks ahead. So let me show you what I'm looking at here on the 500 millibar by Thursday, right? So we've got that cold air pressing, this what remains warm out west. That red is that's your ridge. That's a little bit more warmer anomalies out here off the west coast back into Texas. I mean, they could be hitting 70 by the time we get into Thursday time frame in parts of Texas here. But we also have a developing low pressure that's going to be setting up off the southeast coast, right? So we have this low pressure that's going to be developing off the southeast coast. It's 1,007 millibars, and the reason why I show you this is going to have implications on the pattern going forward. So we have 1,007 millibar low pressure. This sets up about Thursday night time frame. So let me continue the view, and even by the time we get into that Friday night time frame, that's about a 24-hour difference. This thing bottoms out at a 980 millibar low pressure. Now that's a 27 millibar drop. All right, so I only show you this because in like meteorology terms, that actually classifies as what indications of what they call a bomb cyclone, or like rapid and deepening of a low pressure system. But the good thing about this particular system, it's going to remain well offshore, right? And so it's not going to have any amplifications on parts of the Northeast with this particular system. But the reason why I show you this, it's going to have credence going forward of what's to come down the road, because it's going to set up a 50-50 low and it could create that blocking and the steering mechanism to help with the second system that's coming, what's to come, right? So let me show you what I'm talking about here with these Miller type A setups. So with that negative drop in the SOI index, typically you start to get indications of these like Miller type A setups, nor'eastern type setups. And I think that's what's to come in the days ahead. So let me show you what I'm looking at here on the setup for Friday. So we have our initial storm that's going to be developing by the time we get into the middle of Friday on the 14th time frame. We've got some snow going to be breaking out in parts of the Dakotas into Minnesota. That's dropping down into South Dakota and eventually swing down into Iowa here. You can see these blue lines. That's your indications of your a little bit more colder anomalies. The red lines are your indications a little bit more warmer temperatures, right? So as this continues to drop further south, it becomes a little bit more amplified as we're starting to get in the area where these teleconnections, these pattern drivers of colder air go negative, right? This is the 15th. We have a negative NAO developing. We have a negative EPO developing. That's some cold air going to be dragging down, and then the steering currents is going to be allowing that colder air to continue to drop. And what that continued to negative drop, it's going to be able to pull it further and further south in the days to come. So yes, by the time we get on Saturday time frame, we could be having some heavier snow breaking out into Iowa, getting into portions of Missouri here as we start to see the developing of a Miller type A setup with a low pressure system. We've got that negative drop in the SOI index, right? The more active subtropical jet coming across. It's going to be able to take advantage of these warm Gulf temperatures out here, these sea surface temperatures. Going to create that lift. You got cold air pressing down from the north. You could have some overrunning conditions, starting to develop some snow into portions of Arkansas. Yes, I said Arkansas. By the time we get into Saturday time frame with some snow potentially breaking out into Arkansas, let's take a look at the 700 millibar temperatures, right? That's about 7,500, 10,000 feet up in the atmosphere. But that's upper air dynamics that we're looking at a -9 Celsius. That equates to about a 15-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. That's some definitely cold air aloft, and that's going to be able to drag everything that falls, and that is going to be snow. And as the snow falls, that's going to help cool the atmosphere and all layers of the atmosphere. And this is the kind of in the overnight hours, already your coldest time of the season. This air has been really dry, so it's going to be dry, so it's going to be able to cool even faster down through the mid levels. And so by the time it reaches the surface, we've got 20s. We've got, upper 20s into Arkansas. So not only do we have cold temperatures, 15 degrees up in the upper elevations, or up in the higher latitudes, we've got cold temperatures dropping south, dropping as the snow falls, and that should fall in the form of snow by the time we get into that Saturday night time frame into the Arkansas area with that cooling of the atmosphere. Here's the setup on the 500 millibar. We've got that 50-50 low with that one initial system that set up shop. Look at the low pressure system that's going to be developing off the southeast coast, down portions of the south here. Look at the steering mechanisms. This acts like a steering current with these lines of pressure here, acting as a steering mechanism with this 50-50 low. As this pulls up, that's going to help propel this system more towards the coast rather than push it out to sea. Plus, we've got that negative NAO, which is your Greenland block up here with this red blob here. That's also going to help slow the system down and this is going to be help steering it up the coastline with that Miller type A type setup. So by the time we get into that Sunday time frame, we could be having some like cold air damming coming down from the Appalachians and the transfer over to snow. I mean, yes, portions of northern Alabama again could see potentially some snow starting to break out. Northern Georgia, getting into Tennessee, far portions of North Carolina, getting into Virginia, as this area of low pressure system would track up the coastline and start to really kind of intensify. With that blocking of the NAO here, with that negative NAO, that's going to help slow the system down. This is Monday morning. We're still the lowest time of the day, right? With these temperatures, Look at the area, the blue here, where you're going to have those colder temperatures, and the 540 line that typically implies where it's going to snow at and where it's not going to snow. And then it's going to continue to lift up the coastline into a big 977 millibar low pressure here as this tracks up the coast into the mid-Atlantic states, as well as into the Northeast, into southern New England here by the time we get into Monday afternoon. So now, obviously, we'll fine tune this. This is it doesn't even start till Friday, but this is the overall general setup of what's going to be transferring over the coming days, especially going to this weekend from Friday, starting into portions of Minnesota, drifting down to the southeast and coming up the coastline here. And this would be Monday afternoon. So this is over a 4-day time span, but this gives you an overall general track or a general idea of what's to come with this particular coming up for this weekend. And here's your colder anomalies that's going to be taking place over the next 7 days. So this is between now and next Tuesday, right? So you got all those colder anomalies. This is the 7-day average. You've got the ridge out west still. You got overall above average temperatures. Most of this is going to be this week, but we're going to start to see the trend as we get into the following week of a much colder look, with those negative NAO still in place, the negative EPO in place. You've got the negative southern oscillation drop. We could have more systems. I'm looking at a very active pattern going forward. So it's going to start to get interesting. If you like snow in portions of the South, this is a pretty good setup going forward. So I don't want to get too far ahead with what I'm talking about here, but yeah, I wanted to highlight the first system that's going to be coming in, but there's definitely more opportunities back behind that with more cold air pressing in the days to come. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already, and be sure to share this with your friends and family on social media to let them know what's to come, because I put out detailed reports on a daily basis. So I appreciate you guys watching. Hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already, and catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after storm.